In 1944, a man by the name of John Paul Sartre wrote and produced a play called No Exit. The story is about three people, two women and a man, who are placed in a room in hell where they're to remain annoying each other for eternity. As an existentialist, Sartre believes that hell is other people and that their life and work meant absolutely nothing. After death, they are forgotten and the world moves on in the same meaningless way. Well, if you're joining us from reading through the 6-month reading plan through the book of Psalms, today's reading is Psalm 103, verses 9 through 22, and I encourage you to read that psalm. Well, Psalm 103, verses 15 through 18 says this: For man, his days are like grass, as a flower of the field he flourishes, and when the wind has passed over it, it has no more, and its place acknowledges it no longer. But the loving kindness of the Lord is from everlasting to everlasting on those who fear him, and his righteousness to children's children, to those who keep his covenant and remember his precepts to do them. Now, if you only read verses 15 and 16, you might get the idea that Sartre had was correct when he wrote his play. Very few people are remembered for more than a generation. Our children had an exercise at school where they had to trace their heritage, their lineage, so to speak, back as far as they could. Well, we didn't have a problem with that, but some families were able to trace it back 2 or 3 generations or more. But most people forgot. Most people don't care. And when someone does not have a relationship with Christ, their lives are viewed not as eternal, their lives are viewed as temporary. Now, Hebrews chapter 11 and the first part of chapter 12 disagree entirely with that kind of thinking for someone who has a relationship with God. The reason that Hebrews 11 lists those who had come before, and then in 12, 1 and 2 makes the statement that we are surrounded by a great cloud of witnesses, is precisely because we are eternal. The person who has a relationship with God will never die. His or her body may cease to function, but they will now be standing before God fully alive and waiting for a new body and the new heaven and new earth. And that is what David writes in verse 17 and 18. God is gracious to those who have a relationship with him, and his loving kindness is forever. Generations will remember those who righteously live their lives through him. Just think of it. We know the names of men and women whose only significance in life was that, as far as we know, was that they had a relationship with God. Kings and rulers have fallen on the wayside, and yet we know the names of those who were simple people, and the only thing that they had going for them was their relationship with God through Christ. It is through that loving kindness that we learn how we are to walk and to be remembered. Now, each one of us who has a relationship with Christ has a story to tell, and that story is our legacy. And whether or not we are satisfied with it, God is satisfied with it. He doesn't count our failures. He has forgotten those. He counts our faithfulness to him. And if you would like a PDF copy of this entire reading plan, please send an email to phineasjacobus@runningtohim.net.